Welcome to the Crazy Cool Family Podcast with Don and Suzanne Manning. Parents, what if we could give you the power to transform your family into something absolutely amazing?
A family where everyone is healthy, gets along, loves Jesus, and has great purpose in life.
Hey, let us flip your thinking to unlock the power God has given you to create your own Crazy Cool family.
Hey, this is Jeff Zog from the Dad Awesome podcast. I love the Crazy Cool family, and specifically I hopped into Basecamp, all of these resources, the video resources, the specific guides that let me put the names of my daughters and my wife and just showing me visually, hey, am I making progress? What areas can I attend more to? So I'm so thankful. I want to encourage you guys to hop into Basecamp, sign up, dive into those first intro videos. It's been so helpful for my family.
Hello, welcome to the Crazy Cool Family Podcast with Don and Suzanne Manning. And today we have, who do we have, Suzanne?
Oh, who are you again? No, we have Maddox with us. We're so excited. We've had the best summer series getting to podcast with each one of our kids. And today we're going to talk to Maddox, kid number 6, second boy of 3 boys, middle boy. He's just got a really cool place in the family and dynamic. And so we're excited to share with you who he is, what he's like. And I just know that you're going to find some similarities in your own kids.
Well, and welcome, Maddox.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, so also Maddox is literally days away from going to college.
But we're not going to really talk about that.
Because we cry.
Yeah, exactly, because we cry. So we're not going to talk about that.
I mean, but it's a great time to talk to Maddox is what I mean, is because he literally, we're right at that stage where, you know, every parent's dream and nightmare at the same time that you're sending your kid off to the world, to college. And so we're going to talk about...
Yeah, nightmare, because all the fears of, did I raise them right? Do they know how to do their laundry? Are they going to feed themselves? If
we're in a class, this is the final exam.
Exactly. Yeah. But also dreams, because I've done well. I'm launching them. They're going to be a success. I'm so excited for your life.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit at the end, kind of where your heart is right now as you're going off to school, and you know, and what your faith is and stuff like that.
But let's start back at the beginning.
Let's go back to the beginning about when you were. What do you remember?
When you were just a little guy.
First memory. Come on, first memory.
First memory.
Last month, no.
You were sitting on my knee. I was bouncing you.
Yeah, whenever we were going through all of our stuff for graduation and everything, I realized how little I remember from early childhood and from all of that. But one of the things that was really helpful was going through all the different crafts or different things from the like school projects or pictures from a long time ago or whatever, because I'm not really sure what is a memory and what is just a picture that I've made a memory from. But man, about myself from early on, I don't know.
Like, how would you describe yourself as a little kid?
Yeah, I really don't remember a whole lot. I remember just like loving to hang out with friends and people, specifically with Cade,
his younger brother.
Yeah.
By how much difference are y'all?
Only 2 years.
Yep. And
so we were always together for sure. We definitely did everything together. Like hanging around, because we were homeschooled at the same time, and so we were.
Well, and y'all went to Mother's Day out together, and I just felt like they were the little guys. I mean, they were the little guys, the bonus babies at the end. I feel like.
Yeah, and it's interesting, you know. Here's some parenting dynamics that you and Michael, which y'all didn't get along very well, and there was a little bit more of an age gap there.
4 years.
And then you did get along very well with McKay. You were a totally different kid than McKay than your relationship with Michael.
Well, because it's a little brother, big brother. So did you feel burdened as a big brother to take care of McCade?
No, I definitely don't. Definitely not. I would say that happened later on, but early on for sure, no. I mean, we were just hanging out.
Yeah.
We were just always.
And I just remember
friends.
Maddox being. We were talking a little bit about this before the podcast, that being a very go with the flow kid. It was
except for in what area?
Eating.
Oh yeah, I forgot about. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
That's the
very
only-
picky eater.
Yeah.
And really our first picky eater.
Yeah, and our
So-
only picky eater. Actually, it was one of those things that I was super grateful for. I mean, which is a weird thing because usually a picky eater is annoying, but I just loved it because he was trying to find his voice and he was trying to figure out who he was, and it was a texture thing for you, right? Or
I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's a good example. I usually don't love to try new things in general, and so food is just
was
one
just
of
one of
them.
when you were
For
little.
sure,
And
yeah.
it was impossible to get you to eat something.
Well,
that-
like I would
mean,
gag. Like I would
yeah.
like
Oh,
literally.
yeah.
Oh,
like
yeah.
it was not the kind of thing where I was like, oh, I don't like broccoli. It was like, no, I'm gonna throw up if I have broccoli. Like I can't literally get
Yes.
this down.
And I would try, I'm the persistent one. I would try so hard to get you to try a piece of chicken or something that would just eat something besides pizza.
So he lived
Yeah.
on oatmeal for several
Yep.
years, and
Pizza
then
and
then peanut butter sandwiches.
Yep.
He didn't even like pizza initially,
Mm-hmm.
but we won him over with pizza, and he didn't like Chick-fil-A initially, and
Yep.
we won him over with Chick-fil-A. We're like, just
Yeah.
try it.
As soon as I started going to school, I just kind of had to. You
Yeah.
kind of had to. It was hard. It was harder to be picky, and you just kind of had to try new things and go for it. And so,
But I would say that
And
that
it
was
changed.
it. That
Yeah.
was it when it came to, because other than that, he was an easy to get along with kid. He would go with the flow. He was, he didn't throw fits. Like you said that Macy and him are counterparts, where they're both, they're emotional. They're wired similarly. Did I say that
Yep,
right?
yeah, you did.
And even where they are in the lineup, the middle, they're middle. The kids between a big sister and a little sister, big brother, little brother. But Maddox's emotions were radically different than Macy's, because Macy would have meltdowns. And I don't remember him ever having meltdowns. I don't remember.
I mean, it's interesting too. Even the way they look. If you look at their baby pictures,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
absolutely identical, and both of them. And really just growing up. One of the things before we get off the eating, one of the things I want to talk to parents about. We'd never had a picky eater. I remember you saying, "Oh my goodness, you would always kind of secretly, maybe not, I don't know, judge is the right word, but parents that had a
Oh,
picky
yeah.
eater,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they would say, I'm never going to have, that's never going to happen to
just
me.
do
or whatever."
this, just do this, yeah.
And so, but then you also made some great accommodations, and I think there's a lot that parents can learn there. Because, and I want you to talk about that a little bit, how, we had a ton of kids and we were, going and things were happening, and you made some allowances for his picky eating while still not having to make it where you had to do something all the time. Tell the parents about that.
Well, I mean, we just figured out the things that Maddox liked, and then we would have those. I mean, when he got old enough, I would empower him to make it himself. And so if we were having something for dinner that he didn't want, then I would say, go make yourself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something like that. And so, I mean, and one of the things, and not to throw you under the bus at all, Don, but Don is actually a picky eater. I mean, there's a list of things, eggs and avocados and tomatoes, and there's a list of things that you don't like the taste of. And so even knowing...
Or the texture.
Yeah. And so knowing that and seeing that, okay, if my adult husband man doesn't like that, why am I going to force that on my child? I mean...
Well, and it was, what I want to tell parents is it was a real mind shift for you, because you did not go into...
Yes,
and how you adapted. I think it's just a good mindset to say, you had to, we think about, oh, my kid will never do that, and then my kid does it. That was something.
And it makes me giggle. I mean, now it makes me giggle, because it's like, my kid will never do that, and then they will, and then you're like, oh yeah, thanks God for teaching me that. Thanks God for showing me that.
Yep. And then just Maddox, as you were growing up, do you remember, really when you were in grade school and stuff, you were homeschooled, and then that really kind of bonded you with McCade, and then entered school in third grade. Life kind of changed.
Yeah, life was completely different. Going to school, having friends beyond my family or our co-op or whatever it was, being there constantly, consistently. But I loved school. I was a huge fan of it always. Like I loved to learn. I loved doing the assignments. I loved being around the people. And so school was definitely an essential part that I think helped me become more of who I am, because it allowed me to, be around more people and for sure try new things and step out of my comfort zone, but then also to learn beyond just mom at home.
Enough of me already. Like, come on, Mom, let my world be bigger.
Well, and you also, so you would say school kind of gave you some confidence.
Definitely, yeah. That, and I was pretty good at basketball. in kind of my grade. And so that for sure gave me some confidence. And I knew a few people going into it. And so I found friends actually pretty fast, luckily. And so that was a lot of fun to get to do that and to get to be confident and step out into that for sure.
Yeah. And I do remember, going back to personality, just that you were not a hard kid, that you were kind of go with the flow. I did have to be careful with you because you did have some emotion about you. You were, what would you say, a sensitive kid in terms of, compassionate, very caring about others, but also, if we came down on you too hard or whatever, do you remember that kind of?
For sure.
Well, and like Macy, do you feel like that you've got a little bit of a perfectionist in you, so you come down hard on yourself? Like I know, like in sports, if you're playing your basketball game or baseball, we'd get in the car and you'd say, I should have done this, or if I'd done this. I just remember you kind of beating yourself up a little bit. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, anything that y'all would say was like just addition to what I was already telling myself. Mm-hmm. There was rarely anything that was like harsh or critical. And then I was for sure sensitive. I don't remember like why or how or what even stopped that. I mean, I'm definitely still sensitive in some areas where if there's like even a harsher tone, I'm like, why did they say it in that way? And I am sensitive to that kind of stuff. But I definitely think that for sure in sports specifically is a great example as to perfectionist constantly overthinking or doubting myself. And so whenever somebody else doubts me, it's like, all right, just add it onto the pile of thoughts and ideas that are challenging me. And so I've definitely, I started with baseball and then moved much more into basketball where I just kind of got
well, and I think it was the sports are kind of indicative of how you are as a person, because literally I coached most of your young basketball teams, and you were the best scorer I had, but you wouldn't shoot.
Right.
Because you were always unselfish, trying to get people involved. Like, quit throwing it to that guy. Because he's not
we want to win.
He's not going to score, and you can. But it was good unselfish play, I was almost like wanting you to do more yourself. But that was just indicative of who you are. You were always looking out for people, always helping people. Did you know that's who you were, and did you know you were different in that way?
No. Looking back on it, I can definitely see like the areas of unselfishness, or like the award I kept on getting for
we just looked through all this.
Yeah, all the grade
year.
School stuff was like servant heart over and over and over again. And so I definitely had that spoken over me. But no, I didn't, looking back on it, you kind of see the themes on everywhere, but I definitely didn't think I was like I didn't think I was super selfless or was fine. I just thought I was a child living life.
Yeah, I want to go back and just talk to you parents for a second. If you have a child that's got that perfectionist strand in them, please be aware of it. Please pay attention to it. And what that looks like is if they have a meltdown that might not match the failure, if you will, or if you say something to them and they defend back, or they get back in your face, or whatever that is, just know that they're beating themselves up. They don't need you to jump in and do that too. And so as parents, just know that if you've got the perfectionist child, then lots of encouragement. Find out what they did right and help them in their own mind see what they did. Because
I think that there's usually two responses to like a perfectionist. There's two results. Either they obsess over it or they don't really care over it.
Right. They become.
I'm on the side of apathy, and I would rather just not care or not do it or just not even attempt it at all. But there's a bunch of people that are just like, I want to obsess over it.
Well, dive into that just a minute. So literally you don't want to try things because you won't be good enough at them? Is that because it comes across as apathy? Can you explain that?
Yeah. I mean,
help parents, because I know that there's a ton of parents sitting out there with this child that's sitting in that place of apathy, and they have no idea how to reach them.
Well, I think it can be countless different reasons. I mean, there's like, we are constantly pulled away by things that are more entertaining than trying new things. But I think it goes back to picky eating, that there's a level of comfort and there's a level of security that comes in that. But then like the concept that everybody is bad at something the first time they try it was just not in my brain. And so like I felt bad that I was the only one struggling or not being very good at it. And so
you felt like it was only you, it wasn't everybody else.
Right, for sure. And so like even looking back on basketball and baseball, the two sports I played, I don't remember being bad at it because I was so young playing it. And so all of those things I started young. And so around middle school, whenever I was starting to be aware of trying new things and having to try, and especially in high school, like NCTC, having a full freedom, kind of being homeschooled again, having a full freedom to do whatever I wanted, there was a want to stay in the comfort and to stay in the what I wanted to do. Yeah, exactly. Because if I were to try and do something and it failed, then it's just easier for me to not try and not do it and not know. Because then in the back of my mind, I can say, well, I didn't give it my all, or it would have succeeded if I did this. There's a consistent thought process of like, I'm not going to give it everything, because if I give it everything and I fail, what do I have left? Like, what is the result of that?
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting what the thought process is around that, because, there's some people, Madeline would be an example, just wants to go on the adventure and relishes the adventure,
plows forward.
You're not your thought process, not that you won't go on an adventure, but I mean, right. You don't really, when you have to kind of get talked into the adventure, if you will. Convince
yourself.
Yeah.
That's the value of it. Is this valuable? Is this worth it? You weigh the cost.
For sure. Yeah. Every time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so to just transition to like parent to kid, that dynamic, how did we meet you? What did we do to encourage that apathy out of that apathy, or that perfectionism? How did we do that? And then what would you, or how did we not do it?
Yeah. I think that.
How did we fail you as a parent?
Yeah, I think that a lot of y'all's parenting style with me, I think the massive theme I see over it is freedom. I think that there's constantly been a freedom. Maybe it's through choice, or maybe it's through
exhaustion,
necessity, yeah,
or lack of kid number 6, whatever.
But there's been a lot of freedom, which I think personally helps me a lot, because it causes me to have to fight for myself and do things that I want to do. And for sure, y'all were supporting me and y'all were helping me. And there's a consistent, like, mom in your specific way of talking to me and seeing how I'm doing and seeing how I'm growing. And then dad to pushing me and asking, and consistent, continual invitation of like a little bit of like pursuit and pushing past what I'm comfortable. Both of those super, super helpful, but then also a combination of freedom of I can spend my time kind of however I want. There isn't a lot of requirements or restrictions on my time of what I want to do, especially in high school, but even in middle school. Like if I wanted to go somewhere, mom was ready to drive me, or y'all were ready to make something happen. And so for me personally, that's caused me to have a great conversation with myself and how my thoughts work and who I am, but then also with the Lord to say, if I'm struggling through something or I need motivation, then I'm going to the Lord first, and then I'm coming to y'all, or I'm going to the Lord first and then I'm going to anything else. But that's because of the freedom that y'all have given me in terms of time, in terms of opportunities in my life. Like if I wanted to quit sports, y'all would have been okay with that, and y'all were okay with that. And if I wanted to pursue this sport, like in any sense, there was a sense of freedom of I can do whatever I want, which is helpful. And then there was also like, there's a combination of mom saying you can do whatever you want, and then dad saying, all right, now let's do stuff. Like let's pick something to do.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about that with respect to like I think one of the things that would be like football, because you decided you didn't want to play football anymore, and you would have been a good football player. I mean, you're 6'3" now. I mean, you had some reach and some size, and would have.
You were at a small Christian school, and they desperately needed you, and the coach loved you, so he was like, "Come on, Maddox, play football," and you're like, "No."
Yeah, right. And but you really didn't, hitting people, having a football uniform on. So go through that process of just you were talking about freedom and and perfectionism and all that. How did that relate to, say, football?
Yeah, and I would say that's one of the moments that I like became myself and made my own path and made my own choices. Because I remember in 8th grade, I was like, how do you not enjoy this? This is just not fun. The heat, the pads, the hitting people, and I'm not great. It's not that I'm bad and I'm getting it.
You were smart, so you were a smart player.
Right, but I just wasn't the best. And so I was like, this is just not as fun as basketball. And so I'd rather focus on it. And so I remember talking to my mom and all of the conversations we had, and just kind of realizing that as well, of like, oh, I can quit. Like, I don't have to actually do this. And so dealing with
I'm all about the quitting. But you had a big brother that played and a little brother that played, and so you could have really gotten caught up in it. You could have shoulded yourself.
Right.
Well, I should do this.
That's what I was absolutely doing. All my friends were playing, and all, like, if I wanted, like, that's one, like, all the people were doing it. I mean, it's a big culture in Texas. It's the point.
Yeah.
And so that was a consistent thing. I remember that 8th grade spring, knowing I wasn't going to do it. Like, that whole time we were working out, like, are you going to work out football? Are you going to work out off season? And every single time I'd have this thought process of like, okay, I feel the judgment or I feel the pressure to do football, but I don't like it enough to actually do it or pursue it. And so there was this, like, for sure, this conflict of what do I want to do versus what everybody's saying. But I just kept on saying, Maddox, you don't like it. Like, you don't enjoy it. You don't like it. And so, yeah, I definitely decided not to do it.
I think that was the beginning. I mean,
sure.
the being picky about
the
your
beginning
food,
of
the being picky about your food. That was one place where you're like, no, this is who I am and this is what I like and what I don't like. But I think that was the beginning of the individualist. We don't know exactly what Maddox's Enneagram is, but we think it might be a 4. We think because he very much gets an idea of this is who I am and this is what I want, and you really can't sway me. You can't. And you know, I say all the time, I've got all my kids convinced about one thing or another, and Maddox is like, yeah, I don't know if I agree with that. And I'm like, wait a minute, who are you? And so but it's been fun, and he's really good. Maddox, one of the things he's really good about is having a conversation and covering all sides of the conversation. And you have a stance, but if somebody else has your stance, then you'll totally hop on the other side and have the other side just to play devil's advocate, just to have a good conversation.
Yeah, it's true. I definitely love conversation.
And so that's another thing, a deep conversation. He's like Mackenzie in that's, tell us a little bit about your...
Has that always been, I mean, do you feel like that even when you were younger, you had deep conversations with your friends and things?
I definitely wanted it. I definitely, like thinking back, even whenever we were hanging out, I can definitely see that we were having deep convos, and not necessarily deep convos, more of just like we were talking about deeper things to some degree, but definitely moving on and moving up. I think that one of the things that changed was really with Kinsey, and with talking with her, she would consistently pursue me, like even if it was on my bed or taking me out anywhere, as I would just consistently pursue that and do that.
So you're saying that you Mackenzie like fed those deep conversations in you, like it was in you, but she watered it and she grew it. And I
think that's whenever I started realizing that I actually liked deep conversations. Yeah. But like the specific moment I remember was I had some baseball season, so I must have been young. I don't even remember when it was, but it was super far away. And so Mom would drive me every single time. It was like a solid 30, 45 minutes.
Oh, I remember that. Yes.
But I started like looking forward to those conversations and those car ride conversations that I don't think I had a phone at the time. And I don't remember what we talked about, but that grew our relationship more than anything I've known or thought of. But that also grew the desire to talk and to enjoy things and to like really enjoy conversation and to just the power in conversing. And I realized that without me being even aware of it, that I was a external processor where it just helps that the more I talk, the more I realize, and the more I understand, and the more I learn, like everything. I learn so much through other people and what they say, way 10 times more than like reading a textbook or reading a book. I'll listen to a lecture for hours. Like I'll listen to somebody's podcast, just people talking for hours, just because I want to or I like it. But that I think that looking back on it, it's for sure always been a thing. And even if like I was hanging out with my friends, then I usually wanted some level of deeper conversation, even if it wasn't being had. And so I don't know where it came from or what, but for sure, I mean, that's our family's culture as well, is to have deep conversations. And so I love those.
Maddox is the kid that comes to me consistently and says, Dad, I remember you said 6 months ago this statement, and I learned, and this is what I remember. And I was like, I don't remember saying that.
No, well, you're crediting me with
I'm
some
really
wisdom. Well, and Maddox is the one that he can pull up a quote from anywhere. He knows all sorts of lyrics. I mean, his brain is very high level.
Yeah, and listens to lyrics a lot.
Yeah.
All the boys do.
Love
You know,
songs.
they love songs and love to talk about the meaning of songs and love songs with lyrics, not just songs that are so music heavy or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so you started talking a little bit about you and Kenzie's relationship. What about the others? Like, how did you fit into the family? How do you being the middle brother with a bunch of big sisters?
Yeah, I'd say for most of the childhood, I was off my own. Like, whenever we were done with dinner, me and Kay would go off and do our own thing.
Yeah, because y'all were little guys.
Yeah, and so y'all would hang out and talk, and we would just go and do our own thing. And so I remember that. And then I think somewhere along middle school, I started to enjoy being around the family and enjoy hanging out with everybody.
Do you remember sisters leaving one by one? Do you?
For sure. Yeah. For some reason, Madeline was just traumatizing, honestly. Like, I was just like, I remember just crying often whenever I thought about her leaving, because I really don't remember Molly even being in the house.
Because Molly never really left. She was there.
Oh, well.
No, I just don't
Molly
remember.
stayed local. God bless her.
But I don't remember Molly leaving this, like, I don't know. But then for some reason, whenever Madeline was leaving, it was really big. And then me and Macy did a really good job of valuing me and McCade. And
still does.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a connection there. And then Mackenzie, I felt like I was old enough to where I was like, all right, I've done this before. It's all right. It's okay. But no, I've have a really cool relationship with each and all the siblings. And as I've grown up, they've respected that in a sense.
Yeah.
They don't view me. Even whenever I was in middle school, they never viewed me as a middle schooler. They kind of viewed me as a high schooler and expected me to be more mature and expected me to be older, which I think carried into almost every single area of my life. Is that, I know how to act around high schoolers, and I know how to act around people that are older and more mature, especially
even high school girls. You know how to act around.
Except they're not normal high school girls. But yeah, I definitely think that great relationships with all of them. Me and Michael had a rougher relationship growing up, but then the Lord's redeemed that in a really,
and he
really cool
talked
way.
about that. I mean, and one of the things that came out of Michael's podcast, if you haven't listened to it, is he said that when you came along, he had been the first boy after 4 girls, and he had been, worshipped and adored and put on a throne, and you came along and he was kind of dethroned because he goes, how do you compete with this cute, tiny little guy? And so when he realized, wait a minute, I'm not dethroned, we can have more than one throne. Then anyway, so he did that. And so, but yeah, talk a little bit about y'all's relationship, the maybe the ups and the downs.
Yeah. I mean, he's my older brother, and so I looked up to him for everything. And even if you hear in our voice, like he's come back for the last couple of weeks, and a lot of my mannerisms I've discovered are very similar. And I'm like, why am I talking like Michael? What is happening? What's going on?
All the sisters talk alike.
And so I just it's like I'm fine whenever he's not here. Like, I have my
You're
own
your
stuff.
own person.
Exactly. And then as soon as he's back for a couple of days, I'm like, what am I saying? What is going on? But no, I mean, like, literally everything he did, I wanted to do everything.
Except football.
Right. And that was later on.
Yeah.
I did football because of him.
Yeah.
And I started to like almost everything. He was always right, even whenever we were in an argument. If he'd said something like, oh, maybe that is true. Maybe that is right. I never thought about it that way. Like, he was just the older brother, especially being 4 years older. In a sense, he just knew everything, and he kind of did. Like, in almost all the video games, he always had the best strategy. And all the basketball, he'd teach me new moves and teach me new things. And so that was definitely an upside, as having somebody to look up to and having somebody to kind of pave a path in some sense. And then a downside was that we didn't really get along, and he was not the nicest a lot of times. I think I
would flip that and say he was mean.
Well, and even back to you being the big brother, I remember you feeling the burden to protect McCade from Michael. Like, Michael would come in and, beat you guys up, and you would get in, I just remember that little scene. Or actually, I think maybe Mackenzie told us about that.
Yeah,
but I mean, Michael's always been physical and likes to fight, and that's just not really my thing. Yeah. And so, but he's 4 years older than me, And so there wasn't a whole lot of wrestling. It was just him winning the whole time. And so I just didn't like it. But McCade was much more physical. And so I remember us playing this football game, and I would record and be the referee, and they would just go at each other.
Yes, that's true.
So that's 6 years that Michael has on him.
And McCade would fight like
I loved it.
He would fight, and he's the toughest kid ever invented too.
Right.
And so
he would jump on tables.
Yeah.
For sure. And so there was definitely a level of that. But I just say that he those were the good sides, and then there's I don't even remember a lot of the downsides of, like, I remember him being mean, or you could say bullying if you want, but just I don't really remember a whole lot of that growing up. And then if anything, the more thing I remember is once we got into middle school, there was just a distance in our relationship. That, I mean, he was in football all the time, and being like 4 years younger than he's in middle school, I'm in lower school.
Yeah, and he's in 8th grade, you're in 4th grade. I mean, there's a big difference.
Tough. I mean, for anybody, any person. And so once we got into high school more, the Lord redeemed that relationship in a really cool way.
Well, and then you've even walked in his pathway because you did NCTC like he did, which is a junior college instead of have the high school experience.
Well, just to explain what they did was after their sophomore year of high school, they didn't go to public or private high school anymore, and they just went to NCTC, a junior college, and basically were homeschooled to take credit to get a
dual credit. So they got high school and then also college credit.
Yeah, so you're going into college with 40, 50 hours of
I didn't
credit.
have enough to live on campus, and so I'm a sophomore as far as they're concerned.
There you go.
Yeah, which is tricky. So, and then that's the other thing, you're following him to Arkansas too. So Michael's gone there. He's kind of built a life, and he's invited Maddox into it, and Maddox has decided that he's going to go.
Yeah, into the Christian.
I mean, some sisters are there too, so we feel really good about sending him up with family for sure. Okay, so let's transition to the last point, and so. You talked about school and you talked about family and how they've made an impact. So talk about church a little bit. Like how did maybe your siblings lead you into church, and then what is that happened? And then obviously your relationship with God. We want to talk about that.
Yeah. It actually transitions really well because part of the redeeming of that relationship is Michael.
You and Michael.
Yeah, Michael had stepped into being at NCTC. We basically have the freedom of a schedule of a college student, but you live at home and you're still in high school. And so there's a lot of time that he gets to have. And so he chose to take a massive step into the church and to spend a lot of time investing and being in leadership to some degree as much as he could. And so
leadership in youth.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had taken a lot of ground in that area and met a lot of new people and built a really cool small group that whenever I was a freshman and he was a senior, I got to step into that, and he built a really cool community that gave me a lot of my friends that I've had all of high school. And so the church has been a massive role. Specifically, I mean, there's been definitely elements of going to different church camps, I got baptized and all those different things that happened throughout middle school, but then in high school, that's whenever I chose to have my relationship with the Lord became my own and became more serious around that time, around 9th grade. And then all throughout all of high school, I've been heavily involved.
Well, so I just wanted to talk about the crisis of belief. Or is that what you were going to say when you were in 9th grade? I remember standing in the kitchen and you saying, I just don't know if I believe all that. And Molly happened to be here. I'm not sure why she was here.
She was living here, right?
Was she living here? Maybe that was when she was living here. And I remember after you had said that, and I can't remember what amazing, profound thing we said, like, well, that's okay, or whatever. Or, Molly comes in, tears are pouring down her face. Mom, what if he doesn't love Jesus? What if he doesn't love Jesus? This is terrible. How can you just sit there and listen to him?
Yeah, that was one of the moments for sure that I vividly remember. And I was just was questioning. I mean, I read in a Holocaust survivor book, and the morality of God became really up in the air and started to question it. And so I brought it down, and we had a great conversation that started a whole process. So that was one of the moments that a couple months prior, I felt like I got the emotional sense from the Lord that I had kind of felt the grace of God very vividly at a school camp that we went to, and that was the emotional side. And then a couple months later, that was more of the logical, theological side that I started working on, that I was like, okay, who is this God? Who is this guy we're talking about? What are all, and that led to even more cool conversations throughout all of it.
Well, I think it really, it challenges what we say to parents a lot, that, your kid goes through a faith journey that 13 to 16, 17, sometimes with the kids it's even longer, but he can even go through college or whatever, but just being there and being able to be willing to be a safe place and answer the questions. And it's interesting, like with Molly, she hasn't been a parent at all at that time.
Oh, yeah.
And so she is freaking out about her little brother. And, I think that's indicative of what a lot of Christian parents do is, oh my goodness, these alarms go off. And so you're like, trying to lecture them or,
right.
And convince them into the faith. Yeah,
sure.
no, you're wrong.
Right.
You need to believe like this. And why would you ever think that, and all those things that parents can say. But in reality, all that does so often, I think if we would have done that, especially with you, it would have driven you away more.
100%.
And don't you agree? I mean, so talk about that,
Alienated.
like what happened in that process from your relationship with your mom and dad.
Yeah. And so a lot of, like, with me growing up, very Christian household, Christian school, Christian background.
This is who we are and this is what we do.
Exactly. For me to question that, like, there's a lot of consequences if I were to somehow go through the route of me not believing. And so, like, in my mind.
And what do you think those consequences, what did you think?
Well, you'd be labeled a black sheep.
Well, if I were, like, I'm the kind of person where I'm either like for it or against it. And so, I mean, I like to sit in the gray and understand both sides, but usually if I agree so strongly in an issue, I will argue against it. And I won't really, like, if there's something that I disagree with, like, there's a stirring in my chest and I can't really, it's hard for me to hold my tongue a lot of times. And so for that realm, I would have been the atheist kid at the Christian school. If I would have, if like worst case scenario, I would have gone that route. Because
atheist kid in a Christian family.
Exactly, because I was the Christian kid at the Christian school,
Yeah.
and so I was the one who, like, I was the super right, holier than thou Christian kid, and so.
Well, you were known for having a good faith.
Sure, yeah.
You weren't
yeah.
like, because I mean, you weren't like, what I want to explain, the reason I want to bring that up is because you weren't holier than thou, like you weren't a Pharisee, you weren't, because you were very compassionate, but you were just known for having a high standard of your belief.
Yeah, I think that looking back on my time, I was pretty judgmental because.
So maybe you were a Pharisee.
Yeah, I really was, because middle school, my relationship with the Lord was, I viewed him as a judgmental, angry God, and so that's how I viewed other people as well. Wow. And so there is a level of, like, I'm not entirely sure what that looks like. It's not like I was like, oh, they're terrible people, right. But it's like I chose to not hang out with certain people because
of what they did.
Yeah, which is terrible. I mean, like,
I do remember that.
Like, it was just, I was not very accepting. I was very, you're doing something wrong, so you're wrong, and that's
right as everybody's going through choosing to do things
for
wrong.
For sure. And they try things and fail, and I was too busy staying in my comfort zone and not wanting to do anything bad. And so, yeah, there was a lot of judgment because I felt judgment from my father, not my father, the father. And so there was a judgment from there, and so I judged everybody else.
Yeah. And so what flipped? You said you got a taste of grace.
Yeah.
I would not say that I would say that you live your life at a high standard now, but, I don't see you being super judgmental to people. And what changed?
Yeah. I mean, just going through it, I was feeling pretty lonely through kind of 7th and 8th grade. I kind of pushed back from a lot of my friends, and because I didn't want to do what they were doing, or I felt not great about all that. And so, but then around the end of 8th grade year, I just kind of felt emotionally a lot of the grace of Jesus. I've kind of said it just kind of clicked, the idea of salvation. It kind of started me on this journey of realizing this concept of grace, which is insane, that we can never out sin it and we can never outgrow it. It's this like overflowing waterfall that as soon as there's any dirt on us, it just immediately comes off. This just concept that I'm still wrestling with at 18 years old, that I'm like still learning about a couple weeks ago. And once I got a picture of that, I think it helped me see the sin and brokenness, and how like one of my mentors who said it is that if we were to have the understanding that God has in everything, I think we'd be a lot more compassionate. If we were to understand how they grew up and how people grew up, and like knowing how I grew up, like I can understand my thought processes. And so God at a way bigger level understands people's thought processes, and there's a lot of grace given in that, because you're like, man, I can understand why you would make that choice or why you would choose that in some way.
And so I want to just talk to parents for a second. So while that was hatching and evolving in your life, that was centered around a spiritual experience. That was wilderness, right? Mm-hmm. And so the school that we went to had an experience where they took these kids out into the wilderness and they camped for a week. So they got to live in the elements and be surrounded by God and have worship and all of that stuff. And so I highly recommend you create a spiritual experience for your kids around that 7th, 8th, 9th grade place, so that because they're so spiritually attuned at that time in their lives, they're so desperate and so hungry to transition your faith to their own faith, and they're asking those questions. And so that's a perfect time to put in some of those experiences.
Yeah, I won't even want to jump in. If you're in base camp in our membership site, free, it's basecamp.crazycoolfamily.com. There's a whole course on bringing your kids to Jesus. It's the kid to God relationship. And the last two, we have an acronym. It's called ALIVE. But the last two things, the V and the E, are validity and experiences. And validity means that your kids are going to ask questions. It is to validate their questions, validate their experience. Don't judge their questions, validate their questions, encourage their questions. And the second thing, the E part, or the last part, is the E part, which is spiritual experiences, of balancing the world's experiences with spiritual experiences, like church camp, like worship nights, like getting involved in the youth group. Those things are awesome because they really do channel your faith, right, and give you opportunities to grow your faith.
For sure. And to make them optional. I remember being around the church, I've seen a lot of cons to people that force their kids to go to church. And that was never the case. I mean, we came every Sunday.
Because you really didn't do youth group in middle school.
In middle school,
Exactly.
I remember all the kids did not like middle school youth group.
I tried it. They
all tried it.
I mean, all of our kids, not all the kids in the world.
Our kids were not fired up about middle school youth group. Right.
Yeah, and so that's not the case for everybody. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, but I remember that being a conversation is like, do you want to go tonight? That's the question, not we're going. And I get church staff, and that's a different thing that you got to be there. But in any way possible, the more optional, the better. I've seen a lot of wounds and a lot of hardship come on people. You can just see it. You can see the kids that have been there over and over
forced.
again. Yeah, they have to be there, and they make the most of it. That's the coolest thing about it is they find their friends and they have fun, but they're not getting anything out of it. They're not, because like going back to the freedom is that once you make the choice of it, it becomes your own. It becomes more like, whenever I started going to church, I stopped viewing it as y'all's church. It became my church. And even though y'all have this history, I was like, y'all don't know what Wednesday nights look like. Y'all don't know what I do on a Sunday. I'm serving in a whole new realm. It's my own thing. I know people that y'all don't even know. It's For like, sure. It becomes my own thing. It becomes my own church. Whereas if you're forced them to go every time, there's no sense of wanting to even make it your own.
Yep. That's so good. And that's perfectly transitions to just some final words. What would you say to parents that have a kid like you, that have the extrovert, maybe not so adventurous,
the extrovert perfectionist.
I would say I'm much more introverted.
No. I meant to say external processor. Introvert, external processor. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. I think that the conversations, any and all conversations, I think that teaching them how to initiate those conversations, hopefully with you as the parent, is super helpful, because I just kind of talked to y'all, and I don't know how that happened or when that happened, but I learned how to have conversations with the family. And so for me, conversations and talking about things is the biggest thing in the entire world. And so y'all do a great job of making me feel comfortable and making me feel seen and making me feel known. And so like even like looking into parenting other people, I have a great relationship with my parents, and the main thing I point that back to and the main example is that I can talk to them about anything, and I know that, and I welcome that, and I have freedom in that. And so that's the number one thing for me, has been an open relationship, a freedom of that, because like I definitely feel like I can trust y'all, but I definitely get the sense that y'all trust me. And so that is giving me a confidence to looking into college, to step out into that of, it's not like I'm leaving behind some massive baggage, or I finally get freedom for my first time, or I finally get to try new things. It's like, no, I don't. I've been coming home. Like I don't have to tell you where I go all the time. I can come because you trust me and you know what I'm gonna do. And so that's the main one, is freedom, and then like a open communication. That's essential. And then the last one would be to pursue and to push beyond. I would say
You're
that.
saying we don't push you enough?
Yeah.
Oh, good to know. Good to know.
I definitely would say that. I think that there's a freedom and there's a ability to be like, oh, he's doing okay, he's fine. And I think that there's an invitation to where whenever I'm fine, I could be great. And so one of the things that I've learned is the value of being healthy in all the different areas. And so whenever I'm not healthy, I think it's pretty obvious, and I tend to put my heart on my sleeve, and I tend to show it. And so I don't know the balance, and I'm sorry to any and all parents, but like there's a balance of like pushing and being there, but then also figuring it out. And y'all have done a great job of kind of forcing me to figure it out. Is be like, all right, you're not healthy. Discover how you get healthy, and y'all definitely helped me along the way, but y'all weren't like, all right, you're not physically healthy, let's start working out, and let's start like y'all made me have to find that motivation.
I totally agree with that, because and I think it was a tough dilemma because you're a great kid, and so you're like, if I push too much, I don't want to push and cause conflict. The relationship's good, but I've felt, especially these last couple of years, like, how do I help Maddox be more of his best? And I am a pusher, as we've all known that I am the one that says, but yeah, I can totally relate to that. And so, what I'm hearing from you is man, I wish you would have kind of called out even more in me.
That's so good. Yeah.
Well, and then, for moms, as you tell me that, Maddox, I'm like, oh yeah, I could have pushed more, but in my mind, it would have been control. And I would have come in and done it. And I think that so many times moms do that. I'll come in, and even getting you ready for college and stuff, I've bought this and done that. And we just looked at all of it, and I'm like, wow, it's all gray and black. Do you even like gray and black? And I've just controlled it all. And so that's a thing too, parents, is we go to motivate our kids and push our kids and give them freedom. Where's that balance between coming along beside them? I mean, I see a picture of either pushing them, doing it for them, or coming along beside them and saying, come on, let's go. Let's go.
That's good. Yeah. Or not doing anything.
Or just backing out. Like, I don't want to control it and I don't want to push it, so I'm going to back out and not do anything.
But I think overall, I still, even though I think as a parent, I could have over the last couple of years or 2 or 3, 4 years, pushed you a little more. I mean, I think so often we push too much. Absolutely. And it comes down to the options you were talking about. And also I think that if you're going to err on the side of, and for most parents most parents need to push less because they're doing it for them. They're all over. It's more of the helicopter parent and things like that, or angry parent or whatever it is. Because then what happens is, and I think what you said is, you've developed a confidence and a trust that my parents believe in me, and that I feel more ready to take the next step because it's there, and you feel like that you're being launched rather than being, that you're going from being controlled for 18 years to total freedom.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, that's so true. I definitely think that, like for freedom, that Christ has set us free. And so the goal is to be free and to be able to walk free of anything. And so there's no bondage, or there's no, shackles, because I'm able to walk freely in confidence of, I know what I'm doing. I know what life looks like. I know what it can be.
I can make a peanut butter sandwich.
I can make a peanut butter. Yeah. And I think that yeah, I think erring on the side of freedom is essential. I think that like is what's the worst that can happen is there's failure and there's wounds. And failures are usually not as big of a deal. They're usually learning opportunities. It's wounds that I think that we should be careful of. But we have a great healer that can heal all the wounds and a great doctor that attends to them. And so I definitely think that we should protect against any and all wounds. But sometimes the protection can cause wounds. And so there's definitely a balance of freedom and of contextual, like protection and control. The Lord does the same thing. The Lord is like protects, but then also gives a lot of freedom in a lot of areas.
Well,
thank you,
Maddox. You're a great kid, and we're going to miss you as you go off to college. Thank you for sharing your heart, and thank you for just being honest. If you're wanting to know how to parent a kid like Maddox, there's another podcast in the back where you talked about how your sin led you to grace. And you remember that? And talking about, it's interesting, Maddox is one of those, he's been a good kid, but there's things along the way that if we didn't parent it well, could have caused those wounds you're talking about. Yeah. And, when you were going through the faith crisis and you were, being an emotional little kid and maybe, love it. And I thank you for being honest so parents can learn how to parent a kid like you.
Awesome.
That's the deal. Who knows your kid best? We want you to know your kid best. And that's what we're trying to do, is talk to all of our kids, see the differences, see the dynamics in the relationships so that you can apply that into your family, parents, as you're going through your own unique parenting journey. Our parenting journey has been unique. Yours is going to be unique, and God can speak to you in all of the relationships in your family. Any parting words, Suzanne?
No. I got none. I'll just cry.
She's about to cry. She's thinking about you leaving again. So, Maddox, thank you so much for being here. And we have one more to go next time with McCade. And he's our 16-year-old. Maddox is 18, launching out. And so we're going to talk to him, and then we'll wrap up the series, Who Knows Your Kids Best? In the meantime, parents, go be crazy as always. crazycoolfamily.com.